In the late 19th century, Josephine Cochrane was living the life of an American socialite. She threw lavish dinner parties. She owned china that dated back to the 1600s. But she had a problem. Her servants, in their exhaustion, were chipping her heirloom plates. Every dinner party was a gamble. But Josephine Cochrane wasn't just a socialite. She was a widow with a mountain of hidden debt and the blood of an engineer running through her veins. Frustrated, angry, and desperate, she slammed her hand on the table and shouted a sentence that would change domestic life forever. "If nobody else is going to invent a dishwashing machine, I'll do it myself." On December 28, 1886, she did just that. But this isn't just a story about dirty dishes. This is the story of a woman who took on the male-dominated world of mechanics, fought against the cultural norms of the Victorian era, and invented the machine that would eventually buy back time for millions of households. Welcome to the story of the impossible machine. To understand the machine, we first have to understand the mind that built it. Josephine Cochrane was not your typical housewife of the Gilded Age. She lived in Shelbyville, Illinois, in a mansion that demanded constant upkeep. But here is the secret ingredient to her genius: genetics. Josephine was the granddaughter of John Fitch. Does that name ring a bell? It should. John Fitch was the inventor who was granted a U.S. patent for the steamboat before Robert Fulton. He was a brilliant, tortured innovator. Josephine grew up hearing stories of steam, pressure, and mechanics. She didn't just see the world as it was. She saw it as a series of mechanical problems waiting to be solved. For years, she lived comfortably as Mrs. William Cochrane. But in 1883, tragedy struck. Her husband died, and when the grief settled, a terrifying reality emerged. William had left her with very little cash and a staggering amount of debt. The chipping of her china by servants wasn't just an annoyance anymore. It was a symbol of her crumbling world. She couldn't afford to replace these heirlooms. She couldn't afford the inefficiency. She needed a way to save her china. But more importantly, she needed a way to save herself from financial ruin. She needed a product. She needed to sell an idea. Now, let's pause. Was she the first person to think of a dishwasher? No. In 1850, a man named Joel Houghton patented a machine. In the 1860s, Louisiana, Alexander patented another. But here is the curiosity hook. Why had you never heard of them? Because their machines were disasters. They tried to mimic the human hand. They used scrubbers, brushes, and sponges attached to cranks. When you put fine china into a machine with a spinning scrub brush, you don't get clean dishes. You get dust. They destroyed more than they cleaned. Josephine realized the fundamental flaw. She didn't need to scrub the dishes. She needed to let the water do the work. So, picture this. It's 1886. A wealthy widow retreats to the shed behind her home. She isn't hosting tea. She is measuring plates. She sat down and measured every piece of china, every saucer, every cup. She realized that for a machine to work, the dishes had to be stationary. They couldn't tumble around like laundry. She designed wire compartments, racks, specifically fitted to hold plates, cups, and saucers. This seems obvious to us today. Open your dishwasher. Look at the racks. That design? That is pure Josephine Cochrane. It didn't exist before her. But here was the stroke of genius: the physics. Instead of brushes, she envisioned a copper boiler with a wheel inside. The racks would sit flat. A motor, or a hand crank initially, would pump hot soapy water up from the bottom and rain it down over the dishes. She was using water pressure as the cleaning agent. Think of it like washing a muddy car. If you use a dry brush on a muddy car, you scratch the paint. But if you use a high-powered hose, the water blasts the dirt away without hurting the surface. Josephine was the first person to apply the pressure washer concept to dinner plates, but she couldn't build it alone. She hired a mechanic named George Butler to help assemble the prototype. And this leads to one of the greatest conflicts in her story. The professional mechanics she consulted kept trying to change her design. They insisted on scrubbing brushes. They told her, "That's how machines wash things." Josephine, with zero formal engineering training, but a lifetime of intuition, stood her ground. She reportedly told them, "You are trying to scrub the dirt off. I am going to wash it off." She refused to compromise, and thank goodness she didn't. On December 28, 1886, the United States Patent Office granted her patent number 355,139. The Cochrane dishwasher. She had done it. She had a working machine. It was faster than hand washing, and it didn't break a single plate. She established the Cochrane Manufacturing Company. She was ready to revolutionize the American home. She thought every housewife in America would be lining up to buy one. But then, silence. The machine was a commercial flop. Why? We have to look at the context of the era. First, the cost. It cost between $75 and $100. In 1886, that was a fortune, roughly $3,000 to $4,000 today. Second, the infrastructure. Most homes didn't have hot water heaters. To use the machine, a woman had to boil water on a stove, carry heavy buckets to the machine, pour them in, and then hand crank the device. Honestly, it was easier to just wash the dishes in the sink. Third, the culture. Many husbands didn't want to spend money to make their wives' lives easier. Domestic labor was seen as a duty, not a problem to be solved by technology. Josephine was crushed, but she wasn't defeated. She looked at her sales numbers and noticed a pattern. The housewives weren't buying it. But who was interested? Hotels, restaurants, places where washing dishes wasn't a duty. It was a cost. It was a bottleneck. She made a massive pivot. She stopped marketing to the home and started walking into the offices of the biggest hoteliers in Chicago. She was a woman, alone, selling heavy machinery to businessmen in the 1880s. The audacity of this cannot be overstated. She walked into the Palmer House Hotel in Chicago, one of the most prestigious hotels in the country, and convinced them to try it. They loved it. It did the work of dozens of servants. It saved money on broken plates. It was a hit. But the real turning point, the moment that cemented her legacy, came 7 years after the patent. The 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. This was the event of the century. Tesla was there. Edison was there. The Ferris wheel debuted there. And amidst these titans of industry, in the machinery hall, stood Josephine Cochrane. She secured a booth in Machinery Hall, not the women's building, where they displayed embroidery and jams. Machinery Hall. She positioned her invention alongside the massive steam engines and dynamos. She demonstrated the machine live. Crowds gathered to watch gallons of hot water swirling over hundreds of dirty plates, leaving them sparkling clean in minutes. The judges were stunned. They awarded her the highest prize for best mechanical construction, durability, and adaptation to its line of work. She had beaten the men at their own game. After the fair, orders exploded. Hospitals wanted them for sanitization. Hot water kills germs better than hands can. Colleges wanted them. The Cochrane Company began to grow. Josephine died in 1913 at the age of 74. She was still selling her machines right up until the end. She never saw the dishwasher become a common household item. That wouldn't happen until the 1950s. when indoor plumbing and electricity became standard in American suburbs. But her company? It was bought by Hobart, which eventually became KitchenAid and is now part of Whirlpool. Every time you load your dishwasher tonight, look at the mechanism, the spinning arm, the wire racks holding your plates in place. That is Josephine Cochrane's patent. 138 years later, still working exactly as she designed it. Why does this matter? Because Josephine Cochrane didn't just invent a box that cleans plates. She invented time. Think about the billions of hours of human labor, mostly female labor, that have been saved because of that patent filed on December 28, 1886. Time that could be spent reading, working, creating, or resting. She proved that innovation isn't just about electricity or rocket fuel. Sometimes, the most revolutionary acts happen in the kitchen, born out of the frustration of a woman who simply refused to accept that this is just the way things are. History is filled with hidden figures who changed our daily lives in invisible ways. Josephine Cochrane turned a shed in Illinois into the birthplace of the modern kitchen. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden history of everyday things, you need to check out the links in the description below. I've curated a list of books that will blow your mind. Check the pinned comment for the best one. What other mundane invention do you think has a crazy backstory? The toaster? The vacuum? Let me know in the comments, and I might make that the next mystery we solve. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next time we uncover the history they left out of the textbooks.